Hello Bio. We are going to finish off with our section in biomes today, so we're going to jump right into it. So our next biome that we have to discuss is what is known as a temperate forest. So a temperate forest contains a mixture of what is known as deciduous and coniferous trees. So deciduous are again the plants are the trees that lose their leaves during seasons, and coniferous trees, which we will get to there in the definition right there, is they are conifers, and these are produced seed-bearing cones, and most have leaves shaped like needles. So this would be our what we think of our Christmas trees, our pine trees, our evergreen trees, are also known as conifers or coniferous trees. And these forests have cold winters that will halt plant growth for several months. Kind of sounds like what we're living with here in Illinois. And in autumn, the deciduous trees will shed their leaves, and the soils of temperate forests are often rich in what is known as humus, and this is a material formed from decaying leaves and other organic matter that makes soil fertile. So all the leaves that fall off in the autumn time, all those nutrients break down and decompose, and it actually gives us fertile soil because the soil will absorb the nutrients that was once present in those leaves. And so our abiotic factors is cold to moderate winters, very warm summers, year-round precipitation, and fertile soils. So this is what we think of when we think of where we're at in Illinois, is that we're kind of a temperate deciduous forest is what we are. And broadleafed, so our dominant plants are again those deciduous trees, some conifers, we have what are some flowering shrubs, some herbs, and then a ground layer of mosses and ferns, which again are all things characteristic of here in Illinois. And so the dominant wildlife would be deer, black bears, which are in parts of Illinois, just not where we're at, bobcats, squirrels, raccoons, skunks, numerous songbirds, and turkeys. And so where you can find this is in the eastern portion of the United States, as well as here in the Midwest, I believe, and the southeastern Canada, most of Europe, and actually parts of Japan, China, and Australia will also be where you can find this certain biome. So our next one is called the coniferous forest, and it's the northwest, so it's going to be actually in the northwest portion of the United States. And so mild, moist air from the Pacific Ocean provides abundant rainfall to this biome, so there's a lot of rain. It's made up of a variety of trees, including giant redwoods, spruce, fir, hemlock, and dogwood, so all those are just big, the first one, redwoods, being the biggest trees. And because of its lush vegetation, the northwest coniferous forest is sometimes called the temperate rainforest. So because it receives so much rain and moisture, however, it's not that hot tropical, so they call it temperate because it's more in the temperature is more in the middle. And some abiotic factors is there's mild temperature, so it doesn't get too hot or cold. There's abundant precipitation during fall, winter, and spring, so 3 of the 4 seasons receive a lot of rain. And there's a relatively cool, dry summer, and there's rocky, acidic soils. And the dominant plants include a Douglas fir, what's known as a Sitka spruce, western hemlock, and redwood. So they get pretty specific about the actual types of trees that are found in this part of the world. And the dominant wildlife would be what are known as bear, elk, deer, beavers, owls, bobcats, and members of the weasel family. And so where we're going to find this is up at the Pacific coast of the northwestern United States, so like Washington, Oregon, places around there, and then it goes up into Canada, and it can actually start in northern California and go all the way to Alaska. So it has a vast stretch of land that is considered to be this northwest coniferous forest. So our second to last one is called the boreal forest. So this has dense evergreen forest, which has our conifers that are found along the northern edge of the temperate zone. And another example, or another name for this, is called the taiga. T-A-I-G-A is how you say that. So another name for the boreal forest is the taiga. And so summers are mild, and they're mild and long enough to allow the ground to thaw, and they occur mostly in the northern hemisphere. So the abiotic factors that they have long, cold winters. So they have short, mild summers, so there is a warm period, but it's mainly cold for most of the time. They have moderate precipitation. There's actually a high humidity, and they're nutrient-poor soils. And the dominant plants, again, are going to be the conifers. There are some deciduous trees, and there actually are some small berry-bearing shrubs, so shrubs that actually give rise to some berries. And our dominant wildlife include what are known as lynxes, which is similar to a bobcat, timber wolves, members of the weasel family, small herbivore mammals, so things like maybe rabbits, squirrels, things like that. There's moose, beavers, songbirds, and migratory birds like ducks and geese. And the geographic distribution is found in North America, mainly Canada, Asia, and Northern Europe is where we're going to find this. So our last biome is called the tundra, and the tundra is characterized by what is known as permafrost, or a layer of permanently frozen subsoil. So they have literally a layer of soil at the top that is always frozen. And during the short, cool summer, the ground will thaw to a little bit, to a depth of just a few centimeters, and will become soggy and wet. And in winter, the topsoil will all freeze again. And cold temperatures, high winds, and the short growing season will all be limit to plant heights. We're not going to find any big plants in this part of the world. And so our abiotic factors, there's very strong winds, not a lot of precipitation, short soggy summers, long cold and dark winters, and there's poorly developed soils because it's frozen for most of the year, and then because of that permafrost. And there's ground-hugging plants such as mosses, lichens, and short grasses are what you're going to find in this group. So not a lot of big trees found in the tundra. And the dominant wildlife would be birds. There's mammals that can withstand the harsh conditions, so they have to be able to withstand the cold. So there's migratory waterfowl, again, that's being the ducks and the geese. There's shorebirds, muskox, Arctic foxes, caribou, lemmings, and lemming is just a small rodent, it says as other small rodents. So where you're going to find this is in North America, Asia, and Europe are all going to be home to the tundra. And so our last bit to finish this up is going to talk about other land or other areas that kind of don't really fit into the biomes. So our first area are mountain ranges, and they don't fit in because they vary with the different elevation, the different living and non-living conditions. And temperatures obviously become colder as you move from the base or the bottom to the summit, and the amount of precipitation also increases as you move from the base to the summit. So you get colder and more precipitation as you go up the mountain, and plants and animals will also change as well as because they have to adapt to the changing environment. And so the next one is polar ice caps, and these are areas that are cold all year round. And in the North Polar region, the Arctic Ocean is covered with sea ice and a thick ice cap, and the dominant organisms are going to be mosses and lichens, which are just kind of small plants. There's polar bears, seals, actually some insects and mites as well that live in the polar regions of the world. And in the South Polar region, Antarctica is covered by a layer of ice that's nearly 5 kilometers thick in some places. And then the dominant wildlife in that portion is penguins and marine mammals, as in like seals, whales, things like that. So that's it for this section. Let me know if you have any questions.